Hi, my name is Marie, and I'm going to be arguing side B, that the United States was not correct in the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And my main reasoning will be that it was morally wrong and that there were also ways that the war could have been ended. This map is to visualize the distance. And now that we have a bit of visualization, we can understand the countries that we are going to be talking about and a little bit of history context as well. On August 6, 1945, during World War II, the city of Hiroshima was bombed by the United States, killing 80,000 people. 3 days later, another bomb was dropped over the city of Nagasaki, killing 40,000 people. The first bomb of Hiroshima was estimated to be about 12 to 15,000 tons of TNT, which destroyed 5 square miles of the city. The second detonation of Nagasaki was even larger, but it only destroyed 2.6 square miles of the city due to its location between the mountains. After the second bombing, it was then that Japan's Emperor Hirohito announced that the city surrendered, stating that it was a new and most cruel bomb. That is a bit of an understatement, for he and the country of Japan would not know the lasting effects of the bombings would have. It was estimated that tens of thousands of people, civilians, would later succumb to radiation poisoning. 2 atomic bombs were advocated for by General Douglas MacArthur, who was later notorious for his work in the Red Scare, and other commanders at the time wanted to continue the bombing of Japan and actually had a plan for a massive invasion codenamed Operation Downfall, and this was stated that the invasion would cause 1 million U.S. casualties, and that was the opposition of why they wanted to use the bombs, was for a quick end and to save the U.S. casualties. I am all for patriotism and wanting to save our soldiers, but at what cost? We destroyed and eliminated the cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and the immediate casualties being 120,000 and more to come. During the end of the war, the United States was already working on these atomic bombs via the Manhattan Project, and they were tested and they were notably called the Trinity tests. And there was actually a lot of people that were advising against the use of the atomic bombs. There were moral reservations by the Secretary of War Henry Stimson, General Dwight Eisenhower, and even a number of scientists that were actually working on the bomb said not to use it. This is the main point that I want to make, that there were other ways that were more morally correct and other strategic ways that the war could have been ended. Things shouldn't have happened. The war front in Germany at the time was already eliminated, and the United States and allies were only now facing the war front in the Pacific. Not only that, but there were the first bomb, along with the first bombings of Hiroshima, there was a surprise attack on the Japanese positions in Manchuria done by the Soviet troops, and as many as 1.6 million troops had invaded Manchuria. This was significantly more, just as a comparison to the troops that invaded D-Day. The troops that invaded on D-Day was 150,000, and we had taken it over. Not only that, but before the invasion and the atomic bombs, the United States was already destroying cities in Japan by firebombing attacks. The March 1945 firebombing of Tokyo outnumbered the destruction and massive death tolls compared to the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Quote by Robert McNamara in the 2003 film The Fog of War: "In a single night, we burned to death 100,000 Japanese civilians in Tokyo, men, women, and children." I'm not saying the firebombings would be any better than the atomic bombs in terms of destruction. The firebombs are quite worse, but at least it would have given the Japanese civilians a chance to survive. The atomic bombs had no regard for life as they vaporized men, women, and children, and the cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki were not even military zones. Hiroshima and Nagasaki were cities with the majority of people being factory workers. They were civilians. It was not strategic on any part, and the reasoning given by MacArthur was that we could save the U.S. casualties, and it would also place the United States as a prominent and foreboding country that others would fear. But I think that's a little egotistical, as the United States was already known for to be a country to fear, hence Pearl Harbor. Japan had already seen America as a threat, and a surprise attack was the only way that they thought of to destroy our navy as fast as possible. Lastly, I want to point out that the war was nearing an end. I already had talked about how Germany was eliminated and that the war front left was the Pacific. I want to note that there were even translated scripts that American cryptographers deciphered and that alluded to the Emperor Hirohito, and subsequently Japan was even considering surrendering. However, many of the Japanese officials wanted to do what Adolf Hitler did in Germany, which was a mass suicidal destruction of the land. Emperor Hirohito was the one who actually advised against it, and that is why surrendering was such a remote possibility, and why the United States wanted to destroy it. Short summary, the cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki were cities full of civilians. They were factory workers, and they were not military zones. There were already war tactics that would have been almost equally effective in ending the war, such as a full-scale invasion or firebombings. This would have had both sides of the war with equal moral opportunity as far as casualties go. It would have not vaporized hundreds of civilians or people, but could have possibly saved them or the land that became inhabitable afterwards. It was not morally right to decide the amount of human lives on our side was worth more than the human lives on another side.